What if the one door you were told never to open actually had a key hidden just for you to find? Imagine moving into a house with a locked trapdoor that your family warns you about. No one explains why, it's just off limits. But late at night, you keep hearing noises from behind it. Scratches, whispers, cold air seeping out. When you finally discover the key, you can't help but wonder, what's waiting on the other side? Tonight, you'll hear a chilling true story from Reddit about a hidden door that was never meant to be opened, and the nightmare it unleashed. The story begins with a young woman named Claire, who had just moved back into her family's old farmhouse after college. The place was over 100 years old, sitting on a lonely stretch of land in the Midwest. At first glance, the house looked beautiful. White wooden siding, tall windows, and a porch that creaked under every step. But inside, it smelled of dust, mothballs, and something else. Something faintly metallic like rust. Claire told herself it was nothing unusual for an old farmhouse. The first week back was quiet. She spent her days unpacking boxes, cleaning corners that hadn't been touched in years, and moving old furniture that her parents never got rid of. And that's when she noticed it. Behind a tall cabinet in the upstairs hallway was a door. A door so low it looked almost like it was made for a child. The paint around the edges was older, darker, as if it had been there long before the rest of the walls were repainted. Claire crouched down, touched the doorknob. It didn't turn. Locked. When her parents came to visit that weekend, she casually mentioned it. "Hey, what's behind that little door in the hallway?" Her mother stiffened. Her father didn't answer at all, just brushed past the question and changed the subject. It wasn't the silence that bothered Claire, it was how quickly they dismissed it. Like they didn't even want the door acknowledged. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about it. The house groaned and settled as the wind pushed against the siding. Somewhere above her room, something creaked, a dragging sound, as if furniture was being moved across the floor. She sat up in bed, heart racing. But the upstairs was just the attic, and there was no furniture up there. When she asked her mom again the next day, the response was sharp. "Stay out of that part of the house, Claire. Some things are better left alone." That only made her more curious. Over the next few nights, Claire began noticing more odd details. Cold drafts slipping under her bedroom door, though the windows were sealed. The faint smell of soil, like damp earth, seeping from the hallway. And once, as she passed the locked door late at night, she swore she heard something. A faint scrape from the other side. Her parents weren't going to tell her the truth. But one evening, while organizing the attic, she found a small, rusted key tucked inside an old cigar box. No label. No lock it seemed to belong to. Except, of course, the little door in the hallway. And that's where everything began to unravel. Claire waited until midnight. The house was silent, except for the occasional moan of wood as it shifted in the night air. The key in her pocket felt heavy, almost burning against her skin. She walked down the hallway barefoot, each step creaking under her weight. When she reached the little door, she hesitated. Her parents' warning echoed in her head. Some things are better left alone. Her hand trembled as she slid the rusted key into the lock. At first, it wouldn't turn. She pressed harder. A grinding click echoed through the hallway, far louder than it should have. The door creaked open. Behind it was only darkness. A narrow staircase descended into the floor, completely unlit. The air that seeped out smelled damp, like wet earth mixed with decay. It was colder than the rest of the house, sending a chill racing up her arms. Claire grabbed her phone and switched on the flashlight. The narrow beam revealed stone steps covered in dust, with cobwebs clinging to the corners. She swallowed her fear and started down. Every step groaned under her weight. Dust swirled around her, making it harder to breathe. The deeper she went, the stronger the smell became. Not just earth, but something metallic and sour like dried blood. The stairs ended at a small underground corridor. The walls were rough stone, damp to the touch. Strange scratches lined them, long claw-like grooves etched deep into the rock. At the end of the corridor stood another door, this one iron, rusted, with a heavy chain looped through its handles. Claire froze. The chain wasn't locked. It looked like it had been cut, jagged edges of metal glinting in the dim light. Her phone's flashlight flickered, once, then twice, before steadying again. Her breath came fast and shallow. She thought she heard something, a faint shuffle, from behind the iron door. Against every instinct screaming at her to turn back, she pushed it open. The room beyond was bigger than she expected, like a hidden cellar. Old wooden furniture lay broken against the walls, covered in thick layers of dust. In the center of the room sat a chair. Its wood was splintered, and long leather straps hung from its arms and legs, as if someone had once been tied there. Her flashlight swept across the far wall. That's when she saw it. A pile of photographs. Hundreds of them. Black and white, color, Polaroids. Faces staring back at her, some terrified, some vacant, some bruised. Every picture had one thing in common. They were all taken in the farmhouse. Claire's chest tightened. She dropped to her knees, flipping through the photos. Some were decades old, yellowing with age. Others looked recent. Too recent. Her stomach turned when she recognized a face. It was her mother. Younger, maybe a teenager, strapped into that same wooden chair in the center of the room. Her expression was blank, her eyes glassy, as if she were somewhere else entirely. Claire's phone buzzed suddenly. A low vibration in her hand. A notification flashed across the screen. One new photo saved. Her blood ran cold. She hadn't taken a picture. The photo app opened automatically. There she was, illuminated by her own flashlight, kneeling in the cellar. Behind her, in the frame, a dark silhouette stood in the corner of the room. And it was getting closer. Claire's breath caught in her throat as she stared at the photo on her phone. Her flashlight shook in her trembling hand. She forced herself to look up at the corner of the room, where the silhouette had been. Nothing. Just shadows. Her mind raced. Did I imagine it? Is this just dust, the light playing tricks on me? But then the air shifted. A heavy, suffocating pressure filled the cellar, like the room itself was breathing. Her skin prickled with goosebumps, and a low hum began to vibrate in her ears. She shoved the phone back into her pocket and slowly backed toward the stairs. The beam of her flashlight swept across the room again, and landed on something she hadn't noticed before. Carvings. The walls were covered in them. Strange symbols etched deep into the stone, some smeared over with what looked like dried, rusty stains. Others were fresh, their grooves clean and sharp. Her stomach turned as she realized they weren't random shapes. They were faces. Dozens of faces, crudely scratched into the walls, all screaming. Claire stumbled backward, her breath coming fast. Her heel caught on something. She looked down. A shoe. Small, worn, covered in dust. Next to it was a child's dress, folded neatly on the ground, as if waiting for its owner to return. Her throat tightened. The urge to run was overwhelming. Then, creak. The chair in the center of the cellar shifted, ever so slightly, as if someone invisible had just sat down. The straps twitched and tightened, pulling taut on their own. Claire froze. Her flashlight flickered again, and for the briefest second she saw it. A figure in the chair. Pale skin, hollow eyes, a mouth open in a silent scream. And then the light steadied, and the chair was empty again. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. She bolted for the stairs, but as soon as her foot hit the first step, the cellar door slammed shut above her with a thunderous bang. She screamed, pounding on the wood, but it didn't budge. Behind her, the photographs she'd dropped began to flutter across the floor, as if caught in a breeze that wasn't there. They swirled in a slow circle, faster and faster, until they rose into the air. Her own face stared back at her from every single one. Eyes wide, mouth open in terror. Claire fell to her knees, covering her ears as a deafening noise filled the cellar. Not quite a scream. Not quite a growl. Something inhuman. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket. She pulled it out with shaking hands. Another notification. One new photo saved. She opened it. This time, the picture wasn't of the cellar. It wasn't of her. It was upstairs, in her bedroom. The photo showed her bed, and a shadow standing right beside it. Her hand shook so violently she dropped the phone. The screen cracked, but the glow still illuminated the cellar floor. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming from the shadows in the far corner of the room. Claire scrambled to her feet, backing toward the wall, her flashlight beam catching dust and stone. The footsteps stopped. Silence. And then, a whisper. Right in her ear. "You shouldn't have opened the door." The trapdoor groaned as it opened fully, its rusty hinges shrieking against the silence of the house. The air that wafted up from the darkness beneath was heavy, damp, and carried with it the unmistakable stench of rot. It wasn't just dust and mold. There was something deeper, more sinister in that smell. Heart pounding, the narrator gripped the rusty key so tightly it dug into their palm. Their instincts screamed at them to close the trapdoor, shove the rug back over it, and pretend they had never found it. But curiosity, the same curiosity that had drawn them this far, kept pulling them forward. They leaned over the opening. The narrow staircase seemed to stretch endlessly downward, swallowed by darkness. The faint glow they thought they'd seen before flickered faintly again, like the dying light of a candle. It was just enough to sketch out the outline of the stairs, covered in cobwebs and dust thick enough to choke. Each step downward echoed louder than the last. The wooden boards groaned and snapped beneath their weight as if the house itself disapproved of their intrusion. The silence below wasn't truly silent. Every so often, the faintest sound of scratching echoed up from the depths. At first it could be mistaken for mice, but the rhythm was wrong. Too deliberate. Too human. The deeper they descended, the colder the air became. The damp chill seeped into their bones, making each breath shiver in their chest. Halfway down they stopped, realizing something terrifying. The stairs weren't simply leading into a basement. No, the walls around them were stone, uneven and carved crudely. This wasn't part of the original house. Someone had dug this place out by hand, years ago. Finally, their feet met the stone floor. The glow they had glimpsed before came from an old lantern resting on the ground, still faintly burning, though it looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. The lantern barely illuminated the space, but what it revealed was enough to freeze them in place. The underground chamber stretched wide, lined with shelves of dusty boxes and strange objects. Old newspapers, stacks of journals, and glass jars filled with murky, unidentifiable contents were scattered everywhere. The walls bore deep scratches, not random but almost intentional, as if someone had clawed at the stone to leave a message, or to escape. And then came the sound again. Scratching. This time unmistakably close. Turning slowly, they aimed the lantern's weak glow toward the far corner of the chamber. What they saw made their stomach twist. A door, another door, smaller, iron-bound, set into the stone wall. Unlike the trapdoor, this one wasn't hidden. It was meant to keep something in. The scratches were clustered around it, frantic and violent. And the sound was coming from behind it. For a moment, they could only stand there, paralyzed. The air felt heavier now, the smell worse. Every instinct screamed to run back up the stairs, slam the trapdoor shut, and never return. But something stronger, curiosity, dread, maybe even madness, pushed them to step closer. The scratching stopped. The silence was worse. Then, slowly, something on the other side pressed against the iron door. Not a hand, not claws, but a faint outline that didn't quite look human. The lantern's light trembled as their hands shook, and in that flickering glow, they could swear the thing beyond the door was breathing. They stumbled backward, nearly dropping the lantern. The scrape of their shoe echoed too loudly. The thing behind the door responded with a low, guttural sound, something between a growl and a sigh. It was alive, and someone in the family had known about it, because this door had been locked for a reason. The iron-bound door loomed at the far end of the underground chamber, its surface scarred with claw-like scratches. The lantern's flickering glow made the marks look almost alive, as if they were still being carved in real time. The narrator, or main character, stepped closer, every footfall echoing through the hollow stone chamber. The smell changed, heavier, metallic, like rust or blood. At first, it was subtle, a faint shuffle, almost like the movement of fabric. Then came the low, unmistakable sound of breathing. Someone, or something, was inside. Heart hammering, the narrator pressed an ear to the cold wood. On the other side, there was silence. Too much silence. But when their hand brushed the rusty handle, something slammed against the door so hard the lantern nearly toppled over. A guttural moan followed, inhumanly deep, vibrating through the stone walls. Fear gripped every inch of the narrator's body, but curiosity, or perhaps a twisted sense of destiny, forced them to turn the handle. The lock snapped free with a sickening crack, as though it had been waiting for this moment. The door swung inward with a shriek, revealing a space no larger than a closet. And there, crouched in the darkness, was a person, or at least what was left of one. Their eyes were wide, unblinking, glazed over with madness. Fingernails broken and bloody from years of scratching at the door. Clothes shredded into rags. Skin pale, almost translucent, as if sunlight had been a distant memory. The figure staggered forward, collapsing to their knees, their lips trembling but unable to form words. For a moment, it seemed like this was simply a prisoner. But then the truth emerged. Behind the frail body, carved into the stone, were strange symbols, circles, lines, and grotesque faces, layered over and over as though painted in blood. The air grew thick, colder, pressing down with an unseen weight. And then the prisoner whispered one word, voice hoarse and broken. "Run." The lantern flickered violently, and in that instant, something else stirred deeper in the shadows. Something that hadn't stepped into the light yet. The camera lingers on the lantern, the claw marks, and the trembling prisoner, as the narrator's scream echoes into darkness. The whisper, "Run," echoed through the underground chamber like a death sentence. For a split second, silence returned. Then came the sound. Not human, not animal. A guttural growl so deep it seemed to vibrate through the stone walls. The lantern flickered violently, and the shadows in the chamber shifted. They weren't random anymore. They moved with intent, bending toward the narrator as if alive. The prisoner, pale and trembling, suddenly screamed. "You let it out. Why didn't you leave it locked?" Before the narrator could react, the wooden door slammed back open on its own with unnatural force, smashing against the wall. The air grew icy, their breath clouding in front of them. From within the darkness behind the prisoner, two faint, glowing eyes appeared. The prisoner crawled forward, clutching the narrator's arm with broken fingernails, whispering in sheer panic. "It feeds on secrets. It knows yours now." And then, the prisoner was yanked back into the darkness by an invisible force, their scream abruptly cut off. The sound of bones snapping echoed in the confined chamber. The narrator stumbled backward, dropping the lantern. It shattered on the stone floor, plunging everything into near blackness except for the faint red glow of the strange runes carved into the walls. The growling grew louder. The narrator, heart racing, tried to scramble up the ladder toward the trapdoor. But as they reached for it, the wood slammed shut above their head. The latch clicked on its own. Now trapped in complete darkness, the only sound was that steady breathing, impossibly close. The narrator turned, eyes wide in the pitch black, realizing the glowing eyes were no longer across the room. They were inches away. The glowing eyes were so close, the narrator could feel the heat of its breath against their cheek. Frozen in terror, they couldn't even scream. Then the whisper returned, the same voice from before, but now it wasn't urging them to run. It was repeating their name, over and over again. With adrenaline surging, the narrator slammed their shoulder against the trapdoor. Once, twice. On the third attempt, the old wood cracked and the latch snapped open. They clawed their way up the ladder and burst through into the hallway above, gasping for air. But as soon as they pulled themselves out, the trapdoor slammed shut again with such force it splintered. The entire house shook. Stumbling backward, the narrator realized something horrifying. The runes they saw glowing in the chamber below, they were now faintly burning along the edges of the trapdoor upstairs. The seal wasn't holding. Suddenly, a hand, pale, too long, claw-like, burst through the wood, grasping for the narrator's ankle. They screamed and kicked free, sprinting down the hall, not daring to look back. The whisper followed them through the house, rising into a chorus of voices. Dozens of them, male and female, young and old, all repeating the same word, "Stay." The narrator threw open the front door and bolted into the night. They didn't stop running until they collapsed in the middle of the road, where headlights blinded them. A passing driver screeched to a halt, rushing over to help. The narrator babbled incoherently about something in the house. The driver, confused but concerned, called the police. When authorities arrived, they found the house exactly as the narrator described. Trapdoor splintered, strange markings carved into the floorboards. But the chamber below? Empty. No prisoner. No lantern. No trace of what the narrator had seen. The police dismissed it as hysteria, until one officer leaned against the ruined trapdoor. His radio crackled with static. Then a voice came through. Not dispatch. Not a fellow officer. A whisper. It said the narrator's name. The officer dropped the radio, pale-faced. When he looked back at the trapdoor, the runes were glowing again, faint but undeniable. The narrator never returned to that house. They moved states away, trying to forget. But sometimes, late at night, they swear they can hear that whisper again, just beneath their bed, as if the thing they freed is still with them. Waiting. Asterisk. What do you think was really hiding behind that trapdoor? Was it a restless spirit, some ancient curse, or something far worse? The terrifying part is, we may never know. The police never explained the runes, never found the prisoner, and yet the whispers still followed the narrator. Stories like this remind us that sometimes, the things locked away are meant to stay locked. If you enjoyed this story and want more true horror accounts that will keep you up at night, make sure to subscribe to the Nightmare Files and hit the bell icon so you never miss what's lurking in the dark. And let me know in the comments. Would you dare open a hidden door in your own home? Or would you walk away and never look back? Thank you for watching. And remember, some doors are locked for a reason. Asterisk.